Mom threw my suitcase out and said, "Go live with your friends." I smiled and moved out, but when she realized who paid her bills, she showed up at my door crying. I never thought it would come to this. I stood there in the middle of the living room, suitcase in hand, watching my mother's face contort with rage. "Go live with your friends if you think you're so independent," she spat, her voice trembling with venom as she pointed at the door. She wasn't just mad. This was the culmination of years of silent resentment, of quiet sacrifices that she never acknowledged. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips, picked up the battered suitcase she'd flung onto the porch, and stepped outside into the cold night air. The door slammed behind me like the final word in an argument I'd never even joined. You see, for years, I'd been the one keeping this house running. My mother had lost her job a long time ago, something she never talked about, preferring to let me pick up the pieces. I paid her rent, the utilities, and even the groceries. Every check I earned, every extra shift I took on, it was all for her. And for what? A lifetime of condescension and manipulation, a twisted gratitude that only surfaced when she wanted something more. The first cracks in the illusion had started to appear a few months back. Late notices shoved into the mail slot, whispered phone calls behind closed doors. I'd pretended not to hear, not to see. But I knew. I always knew. And now, here I was, standing in the dark with nowhere to go except to the very friends she mocked me for having. It felt strange, freeing even, like stepping off a treadmill I'd been running on for years without realizing I was going nowhere. But what she didn't know, the secret that gave me that smile as I walked away, was that I was done. Done playing the role of the dutiful son, done sacrificing everything for a woman who couldn't even fake love convincingly. As I walked down the driveway, suitcase bumping against my leg, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was in control. And she was about to find out just how fragile her world really was. I didn't sleep much that first night. I crashed on the couch at my friend Mark's apartment. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a blanket and a spare key. It was the first peaceful night's sleep I'd had in years, free from my mother's passive-aggressive remarks and the heavy air of unspoken obligations. But as I lay there in the early hours, staring at the ceiling, the weight of it all finally sank in. The realization that for years, I had been the silent architect of her comfortable life. I thought back to all the times I'd covered the rent when she said she was just a little short. The utility bills that mysteriously went unpaid, the groceries that I filled the fridge with because it's just easier if you do it. I'd let it slide, each small request excused as family loyalty, as responsibility. But those cracks, the late notices, the whispered phone calls, they weren't just signs of financial trouble. They were signs of a life built on borrowed time, on the illusion that someone else would always pick up the pieces. I didn't tell Mark everything that night. Just that I needed a place to stay, and that I'd probably be crashing for a while. He didn't pry, and for that, I was grateful. But even as I tried to sleep, I couldn't shake the image of my mother's face, twisted in disbelief when I didn't argue, when I just walked away. She hadn't realized yet. She hadn't connected the dots. But soon, the notices would pile up, the bills would go unpaid, and the lights would flicker and die. And then, maybe then, she'd realize just how much she had depended on me. Just how much she had taken for granted. I closed my eyes, the thought almost comforting. It wasn't revenge, not really. It was justice, the quiet, inevitable kind that comes when someone finally stops being the safety net. The cracks in her perfect little world were about to widen into chasms. And this time, I wasn't going to catch her when she fell. By the end of the week, the calls started. At first, they were casual, my mother's number popping up on my phone late in the afternoon. I ignored them. Then came the texts, short and almost too sweet. "Hey, just wondering if you're okay." Followed by, "Could you give me a quick call when you get a chance?" I didn't reply. I let each one sit there, unanswered, a silent monument to every time she'd ignored my quiet sacrifices. I imagined her sitting in the living room, confusion turning into annoyance as the silence stretched. But it wasn't until the second week that the tone shifted. The messages became more frantic. The lights went out. Are you paying the bill this month? Another one. I didn't get the rent notice, but the landlord is saying we're behind. Can you call them? I sat on Mark's couch, scrolling through each desperate plea, feeling the weight of them settle over me like a familiar coat. Part of me wanted to pick up the phone, to fix it like I always had. But a deeper part, the part that had finally woken up, told me to stay silent. The unraveling was beginning, just as I had known it would. She was piecing it together, realizing that the foundation of her life was built on me, and without me, it was crumbling. The power flickering off, the overdue notices piling up, the realization that the fridge wasn't magically refilling itself. And the best part? I was watching it all from a safe distance. It was a quiet, cold satisfaction, a justice delivered not by shouting or revenge, but by simply stepping away. Let her face the consequences. Let her finally understand just how much she relied on the son she'd always belittled. Let her learn the cost of her arrogance. I wasn't coming to her rescue. Not this time. By the third week, it wasn't just text messages anymore. My mother started calling my friends, Mark, Jason, even Anna from my old job, asking if they'd seen me, heard from me, if I was okay. Mark, bless him, played dumb, telling her he hadn't heard a thing and that maybe I was busy. He didn't tell me about the calls until later, just shrugged and said, "She sounds like she's losing it." She was. I knew her patterns, the way she cycled from rage to guilt to panic. At first, she'd be furious. How dare I abandon her? How selfish of me. Then the guilt, reminding me of everything she'd done for me, rewriting the story so that she was the victim. But now, the panic was setting in. She was running out of money. The bills were stacking up, the utilities likely threatening to shut off, and the fridge was probably empty. All the people she used to charm, her landlord, the utility clerks, even the cashier at the grocery store, were now realizing there was nothing behind her promises. Just air. I imagined her sitting in the dark, staring at her phone, waiting for me to swoop in and save her like I always had. But I wasn't coming. Not this time. That realization must have hit her like a punch in the stomach. Because the next day, as I sat in Mark's apartment, scrolling through job listings on my laptop, there was a knock at the door. Not a soft knock either, a frantic, desperate pounding. Mark looked at me. "That your mom?" I didn't even have to check. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. There she was. Her makeup was smeared, her eyes red and puffy. Her voice was hoarse as she half whispered, half begged. "Please, we need to talk." I stared at her, at the woman who had once stood in that same posture and told me to leave, told me to go live with my friends. Now here she was, on my doorstep. And I was going to make her listen. I didn't step aside to let her in. Not yet. I wanted her to see me standing there, calm and steady, the way I had always been, but this time, I wasn't going to bend. "Please," she whispered again, her voice cracking under the weight of her pride. "Just let me talk to you." I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe. "Funny. You didn't seem to want to talk when you threw my suitcase out, remember?" Her face crumpled, and for a fleeting second, I almost felt something, pity, maybe. But then I remembered the years of sacrifice, the way she used me, her disdain masked as love. I hardened. "I didn't know," she started, but I cut her off. "No. You didn't care to know. All those bills you forgot to pay? The rent you assumed would get covered? The groceries that magically showed up? That was me. Every month. I kept you afloat, and you couldn't even bring yourself to say thank you." Tears streamed down her face now, but I kept going, my voice low and even, like a blade sliding between ribs. "You acted like I owed you, like my life was supposed to revolve around making yours easier. But guess what? I'm done." She took a step forward, but I didn't move. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I didn't realize. I thought you were just staying because you needed me." I let out a quiet laugh, cold, humorless. "I stayed because I felt sorry for you. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd figure it out one day. But you didn't. And now you're here, asking me to fix the mess you made of your own life." Her sobs were quiet now, her hands trembling at her sides. Please! I don't know what to do. The rent's due, the power's about to be shut off. I straightened up, my voice colder than I thought possible. That's not my problem anymore. You made your choice when you threw me out. For a long moment, we just stood there, the weight of her realization hanging in the air between us. The silence was suffocating, heavy with all the things that could have been said but were now too late. Finally I spoke, my voice barely a whisper. Goodbye, Mom. And then I shut the door. For a long time, I just stood there on the other side of the door, listening to the muffled sound of her sobs fading into the night. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just let the quiet settle over me like a shroud, wrapping me in its cold, satisfying embrace. Mark stepped into the hallway, his expression caught somewhere between concern and reluctant admiration. You okay? He asked. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. Yeah. I'm good. It wasn't a lie. For the first time in years, I wasn't lying, not to myself, not to anyone. I was finally standing on my own 2 feet, untethered from her guilt, her manipulation, her endless needs. But it wasn't just about the money, not really. It was about the years she'd taken from me, the dreams I'd shelved to keep her afloat, the friends I'd distanced myself from because she demanded my attention. It was about the way she made me feel like I was nothing more than a placeholder, a servant in my own life. As I sat back down on Mark's couch, the realization settled over me like a warm, bitter blanket. She was finally going to feel what it was like to be alone. To stand in the wreckage of her own making. And I wouldn't be there to catch her this time. The next few days were eerily quiet. No more frantic calls, no more desperate texts. Just silence. The kind of silence that used to terrify me, but now, it felt like freedom. I wondered if she was sitting in the dark, waiting for me to call, to come running back and rescue her from her own collapse. Maybe she was finally realizing just how much she'd taken for granted. How much she had relied on the son she treated like an afterthought. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to understand that there were consequences to every cruel word, every manipulative demand, every moment of silence when I needed her the most. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little. About a week later, I got a text from Mark while I was at work. It was a simple message, but it made my pulse quicken. She's at the building. Says she's here to see you. I could almost picture her standing outside Mark's apartment complex, makeup smudged, hair a mess, panic carved deep into her face. Part of me wanted to let her stand there, to leave her alone with her realization. But a darker, sharper part of me wanted to look her in the eye and finish what I'd started. I left work early and drove back. Sure enough, there she was, sitting on the concrete steps outside, her phone in her hands, her shoulders hunched forward like the weight of the world was pressing down on her. She looked up as I approached, her eyes red-rimmed, her voice a broken whisper. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She stood, her hands trembling, her lips trying to form words that just wouldn't come. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she stammered. I just thought. What? I cut in, my voice low, measured. That I'd keep bailing you out? That I'd keep letting you use me until there was nothing left? You never thought I'd leave, did you? Tears welled up in her eyes. I thought you loved me. I did, I said, my voice cold and even. I loved you enough to sacrifice everything for you. But love isn't supposed to feel like this. It's not supposed to be a leash, a chain that tightens every time you need something. She started to protest, but I held up a hand to stop her. No. You're going to listen now. I paid your rent. I covered the utilities. I filled the fridge. I sacrificed my own life to keep yours comfortable. And you treated me like a servant. Like an ATM. She sobbed, the sound raw and hollow. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Because you never cared to ask. You only cared when the money stopped, when the bills piled up, when the lights went out. I let the words hang there, sharp and unflinching. For once, she wasn't the one in control. I was. And it felt good. For the first time, I saw her for what she really was: small, fragile, and powerless. "Go home, Mom," I said quietly. "Figure it out. Because I'm not coming back." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, broken and alone. I didn't look back as I walked away from her. I heard her crying behind me, calling my name in a choked voice, but I kept walking, each step steadier than the last. It was strange, really, how easy it was to leave behind the weight I'd carried for so long. That night, Mark and I sat on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the dark sky. I told him everything, not just about the years of financial support, but the way she treated me, the way she made me feel like I was nothing unless I was giving her something. He listened, patient and quiet, and when I finally stopped talking, he just said, "You did what you had to do." And for the first time, I believed it. Over the next few weeks, I watched her life crumble from a distance. Friends called to tell me the landlord had posted an eviction notice on the door. The utilities were shut off, one by one. The house, my childhood home, grew darker and colder with each passing day. My phone buzzed relentlessly with her texts. "I can't pay the water bill. Please, I'm begging you, just this once. The landlord is threatening to lock me out. Can you help?" I didn't answer. I let the texts pile up like unread notifications, each one a monument to her desperation. My silence was louder than any words I could say. I heard through the grapevine that she even showed up at Mark's work, asking for my number, trying to convince him to talk me into helping her. He didn't tell her where I was. He just shook his head and walked away. And then, one night, she showed up at my door again. I almost didn't answer. I almost let her stand there, knocking and knocking until she realized I wasn't coming. But something in me wanted to see it, the final collapse, the moment when she would truly understand. I opened the door. She looked worse than before, disheveled, pale, her hands trembling. Her eyes were wide and pleading, her voice a thin, brittle whisper. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, just help me. I don't know what else to do. I'll lose everything." I leaned against the doorframe, my face unreadable. "You already did. You lost me. You lost the one person who kept you afloat, while you pretended everything was fine." Her tears came faster now, her breath hitching as she tried to speak. "I didn't mean it. I was scared. I didn't want you to leave. I was angry and I said things I didn't mean. Please, I'll do anything." I stared at her, the woman who had mocked me, belittled me, controlled me for so long, now reduced to a shell of herself. The weight of her realization was written across her face. "I sacrificed everything for you," I said quietly. "I gave you my time, my money, my future. And you never appreciated any of it. You treated me like a means to an end. Well, this is the end. You need to figure out how to stand on your own now, because I'm done carrying you." She shook her head, her voice breaking. "Please, just a little help, just until I get back on my feet." I shook my head, calm and unflinching. "I'm not your safety net anymore. You'll have to figure this out without me. And maybe, just maybe, you'll finally understand what it feels like to be used, to be ignored, to be left behind." I let the silence settle for a moment, watching as her sobs turned into quiet, helpless gasps. Then, with a quiet finality, I said, "Goodbye, Mom." And I shut the door. The quiet click of the door felt like the loudest sound I'd ever heard. It echoed in my mind, settling into the crevices of my memory as the final punctuation on years of silent endurance. For a moment, I leaned against the door, my head bowed, my heart pounding. The weight of it all, the years of thankless support, the manipulation, the cold dismissals, washed over me like a tide I'd been holding back for too long. But this time, instead of feeling crushed, I felt free. I imagined her on the other side of that door, slumped against the frame, her sobs quieting into hollow silence. The realization of just how alone she truly was sinking in. And unlike all the times before, I wasn't going to be the one to pull her back from the edge. For days after that night, I kept expecting to feel guilt. To wake up in a cold sweat, haunted by her voice, her tears, her pleas. But none of it came. Instead, I woke each morning in Mark's spare room, the sunlight filtering in through the blinds, feeling lighter than I had in years. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore, it was liberating. No more frantic calls, no more texts demanding rent or help with groceries. Just quiet mornings with my coffee, the hum of the city outside, and the simple realization that I was finally living my own life. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that watched from a distance. Friends, old neighbors, even the landlord's office sent me bits and pieces of updates. She was drowning in overdue bills. The landlord had filed for eviction. The power had been shut off. The food had run out. One day, Mark handed me an envelope. "This came for you," he said. It was a handwritten letter, her handwriting shaky and uneven. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the table, unopened, as if daring it to change my mind. After 2 days, I finally read it. Inside, she poured out everything, apologies laced with desperation, promises to change, pleas for help. She wrote about how she hadn't realized how much I'd been doing, how she was so sorry for the things she said that night, how she didn't know how to live without me, how she was scared, how she was alone. The words felt hollow. Like a song I'd heard too many times before, each note flat and predictable. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done, she was sorry because her safety net was gone. I didn't reply. I folded the letter neatly and set it back in the envelope. Then I tucked it into the back of a drawer, out of sight. As the weeks turned into months, I rebuilt my life. I got a better job, found a small apartment of my own. Mark and I remained close. His quiet support a reminder that family wasn't just blood, it was who stood by you when everyone else turned away. And my mother? She disappeared from my life, her calls and texts fading into the static of the past. I heard rumors that she'd moved into a smaller place, that she was struggling to keep up with the bills on her own. But I didn't check in. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I was free from her grip. The guilt that had once shackled me was gone. And in its place was a quiet, unshakable resolve. I had survived her. And now, I was living for me.